He vanished without a trace after I wore my provocative dress to his family dinner. It's funny how a dress I thought would make me unforgettable ended up being the reason he disappeared without a trace. One minute we were fine, and the next, he was gone, leaving nothing but silence and the memory of his family's judgmental stares. I had no idea that night would change everything. It started so innocently, like any other dinner invitation, but in an awkward way, though. Not knowing that the dress I chose to put on would be the end of us, I should have known. Nothing that felt that wrong could be so right. I met my boyfriend Jerry 2 years ago, and we started dating a few months later after we hung out multiple times. I have never regretted a moment with him before because he tried his best to be the best boyfriend ever. He loved and supported me. He was always there for me, no matter the situation. Our communication was solid, and he always reached out to me. That quote s why I still can't believe he left without a word, and I still haven't heard from him. Maybe I'm just ranting and you don't get what I am saying. So to understand the situation properly, I need to start from the beginning. So here is our backstory. Jerry and I were opposites from the start. He was calm and reliable and was raised in a family that valued tradition and proper behavior. I, on the other hand, was loud, opinionated, and unapologetically myself. Where he thrived on order, I lived for spontaneity. Somehow, despite our differences, we worked, or so I thought, because I'm left alone now in the dark. When we met, it was like two worlds colliding. He was the guy who held doors open, paid for dinners without hesitation, and always asked about my day. He made me feel like the center of his universe in a way no one else ever had. He had introduced me to his friends, and we've hung out together with them a few times, and it made me feel safe and more welcomed in his life. Although I had never met his family before then, he'd mentioned them in passing, their expectations and their standards, but it was always vague, just enough to make me curious, but never enough to let me in. The first time he talked about his mom, he called her a perfectionist, the kind of woman who noticed everything, from the way you held your fork to the way you said thank you to even the slightest shift of the smile on your face. His dad, Jerry said, was a man of few words but sharp opinions. And his sister? She doesn't warm up to people easily, he warned me once with a wry smile. And his brother? He didn't say much about him aside from the fact that he was cool and I'll like him. Aside from this, he made it very clear that his family were highly religious. It was clear that bringing someone home wasn't a casual decision in his world. You only bring someone home if and when things were very serious with this person. But that was for the family member being the person home. For the person being brought home, it was a test that would push buttons I didn't even know I had, a trial I didn't even realize I'd signed up for. For the longest time, I thought he was shielding me from them, hiding me away. Maybe he didn't think I was ready, or maybe he wasn't ready to share me with them, or maybe I was not the one. Either way, I never pushed, no matter how much it worried me. I told myself it didn't matter because what we had was enough. But deep down, I knew there was a wall between us, and his family was the foundation of it. One evening when Jerry returned from work, the invitation came. "Dinner with my family," he said one evening, as casually as if he'd asked me to pass the salt. My stomach flipped. After nearly 2 years together, this was the first time he'd brought it up. I felt like a soldier that just received a Star of Honor or something, but I didn't know what to say. Sensing my hesitation, he said it was nothing formal and it was just a chance for them to get to know me, and that was nothing to worry about. It sounded simple, but I knew better. This wasn't just about getting to know me, it was about them deciding if I was good enough for their golden boy, and for the first time in our relationship, I felt the weight of that invisible wall between us pressing down on me. I'd always felt a little out of place in Jerry's world. He came from money, not the flashy, ostentatious kind, but the old money, understated elegance that you only see in movies. He never flaunted it, but it was there in the way he carried himself, in the understated designer clothes, and the way his friends spoke about vacations in the Hamptons like they were weekend trips to the grocery store. My life was a far cry from that. I grew up in a working-class family where vacations meant road trips and birthdays were celebrated with homemade cakes. I wasn't ashamed of where I came from, but being with Jerry sometimes made me feel like I had something to prove. So I asked him, what if they don't like me? What if I'm not good enough for him? And he said that I shouldn't worry over nothing, that his choice is his family's choice and they will love me because he loves me. And that was enough to calm me for that night. I trusted Jerry's words over everything, including my fears. But that didn't stop from agonizing over what I'll wear, so I spent days doing that. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal, but in my head, it was already a defining moment. So I spent days thinking about what outfit I'd put on. I wanted to make a good impression, but I also wanted to stay true to myself. When I finally settled on a dress, a red daring neckline dress that has an asymmetrical cut. It features high side slits on both sides, offering a bold and revealing look. It felt like the perfect compromise. It was bold but elegant, sexy but sophisticated. I thought it would show them that I could fit into their world without losing myself. Looking back, I can see how much of my confidence was a facade, and it was a stupid idea to think that it would get me on their good side. The truth was, I wanted their approval as much as I wanted Jerry's. I wanted them to see me the way he saw me, fun, passionate, and unapologetically real. But most of all, I wanted to prove to myself that I deserved to be there at his side in his world. So that day before the dinner, Jerry had gone to work, but he had instructed me to dress properly, given who his parents were, and I told him I'll do well to make a statement I shouldn't have attempted to make. Jerry trusted my words and gave me a kiss and told me he would meet me there after work because he was going to leave his workplace late, and he won't be able to get home first before getting there. So I understood him and assured him I'll get there on time because his family were also big on punctuality. Another time that I didn't know if I could keep up with. It's not like I can't be punctual, but I like doing things in my own way and in my own time. But luckily for me that day, I had all the time to prepare and be there on time because it was my off day. I didn't have work, so I spent hours preparing and making myself look classy and elegant. I had the time to consider and reconsider before I chose to go with that confident and powerful dress. I know this might sound a little delusional, but I wanted to leave an impression, but not just any impression. I wanted them to see me, to know I was more than just some girl he was casually dating. I wanted them to feel the heat of my presence, to understand that I was serious about him. And if that meant showing a little skin, so be it. Because that's how I felt powerful. It was one of those outfits that makes you feel like you could conquer the world, but also makes everyone else stare. And as I stood in front of the mirror, I wondered if it was too much. But no, this was my moment. I wanted Jerry to be proud. I wanted him to look at me and see the woman he would never want to let go. It was one of those outfits that makes you feel like you could conquer the world, but also makes everyone else stare. When I walked into his family's home, I immediately felt the eyes on me. His mother, a woman who could freeze you with a single look, and she barely even blinked. His father did a quick once-over before turning his gaze back to the conversation. His sister just looked at me with an unreadable expression on her face, but I could see the judgment in her eyes. His family didn't need to say much to me. I could feel it from their actions, gaze, and expression. Jerry, though? He had arrived before me, so when I walked in, his eyes softened. He smiled that smile, the one that made me feel like everything in the world was perfect. It was like a small reassurance that everything was going to be okay, that all my effort was worth it. Then he approached me and hugged me, then whispered in my ears, "Quite a bold choice." I didn't even know what that meant, but since he wasn't reacting in a negative way physically, so I just thought everything was okay. And if Jerry was okay, then there was nothing to worry about. His brother was last to have a seat at the dinner. He came with entirely different energy that I loved, and then I could understand why Jerry said I would like him, but I wished he didn't say that, or that didn't turn out to be so true. He was warm and accommodating. So when he entered, he was taken back by my beauty. He complimented me and said I look very stunning, and it was good to have someone that looked very different for once, and more of it was welcomed. All eyes glared at him, and he shut up, smiled, and winked at me. The dinner was awkward and filled with uncomfortable moments, but Jerry kept my hand under the table, squeezing it every now and then. It was his way of silently telling me that he was on my side, that I wasn't alone in this battle for acceptance. It should have been comforting. But the more I looked around, the more I felt like an outsider in his world. I wasn't the perfect, innocent girl they wanted for him. No, I was too much, too bold, too loud, too provocative. But then there was Jerry. Every time I caught his eye, there was that look again, the one that told me everything would be okay. I could see the soft admiration in his eyes. That was the only thing that kept me from crumbling. I knew he wasn't okay with the dress I put on, but he didn't want me to feel alone, so didn't say anything. Rather, he defended me throughout our time there because he loved me. But what I didn't realize then was that I was starting to build a wall between us, brick by brick, and the dress was the first piece. I made a joke to lighten the mood, but his father didn't laugh. His sister didn't smile. The room fell into an awkward silence and my heart started racing. I wasn't just trying to win them over, I was trying to prove something. To myself, to them, to Jerry. But the more I tried, the more I felt like I was slipping away from him, so I was getting a little bit defeated, so I decided to go use the bathroom to relieve myself from some of the tense and suffocating moments. When I got there, I exhaled. It was a breath of fresh air, and before I could gather my confidence and go back there, a knock landed on the door. Thinking it was Jerry, I opened without asking who it was, and when I did, it wasn't Jerry. Instead, it was his brother, the person I never expected. At least it wasn't his mother. If I had opened that door and seen her there, that would have made my heart skip out of my mouth. J. Aries' brother smiled at me and asked if I needed help, and asked him why I would need help. Next thing I knew, he stretched his hand forward and rested it on the side of the door, then leaned in, closer to me, and said in the most seductive of ways, "I never said you needed help. I was just offering in case I needed some help." The way he said it made my heart race, but I told him that I was fine, that I just needed to catch my breath, and that was why I came to the bathroom. He chuckled and told me that I don't have to act so tough and that he knows what his family is like, and he knows that I know it too. And he also told me I was a smart girl. As much as I didn't want to agree with him, he was right. He went on to tell me that he was sure I had noticed the way they kept looking at me like I was some sort of dirt-dipped alien. The way he said it stuck a needle in my heart. He said they were judgmental people and that he didn't blame them. He called them unexposed, but that also included my boyfriend, so I quickly slithered from under him and told him to not insult Jerry. That's when he then said something that really got to me. He told me that I look hot in my dress, and that he was telling me the truth because he hadn't been able to take his eyes off of me all through the meal. He said that I was the sexiest being he had ever laid his eyes on, and that he meant every single word of what he was saying, unlike Jerry, who cannot wait for this dinner to end so he'll scold me about the dress when we go back home. I knew Jerry wasn't happy about the dress, but hearing it from his brother and the way he said it just made me feel weak. My response in defense of this was that Jerry loved me. He laughed and closed the gap between the two of us. He told me that what Jerry and I believe is love wasn't love. He said that if it was love, the first thing Jerry would have done the moment I came into the house would have been to come give me a big hug that'll include him running his hands through that slit on my gown and perhaps feeling for some underwear. To be honest, I was getting turned on by his words and I couldn't find a way to deny anything he was saying because he was telling the truth. At that moment, that was exactly what I wished Jerry had done. He said I needed a man that appreciates me and gently touched my hair. For some reason, I can't seem to pull away. He looked at me straight into my eyes as though he was communicating with my soul and said the words I hoped my boyfriend had said that night. He told me that I looked beautiful, I looked sexy, and that gown was the perfect choice. I clear my throat and mutter a soft, "Thank you." I told him that I need to get back, but he suddenly pulled me close and planted a kiss on my lips. The kiss was so passionate that I was lost in it throughout the time we were doing it. But suddenly, he pulled away and apologized for kissing me. He said he never intended to do that, but he just couldn't control himself. I liked that. The idea that someone couldn't control themselves around me. It wasn't that way with Jerry. They say women are harder to turn on. In my relationship, it was the reverse. I'd call him to the bed while I was completely without clothes, and he'd tell me he needed to make a work call. His brother, on the other hand, wasn't like that. He was completely consumed by me just the first time we met. I told him it was okay, that he didn't need to apologize, and he said I was right. He said he wasn't going to apologize for acting on his feelings. Then he came up to me again and kissed me so dearly. This was more passionate than the first time. He grabbed my behind with one hand as he kissed me and had another hand through the slit on my gown. I was wearing a G-string, so I soon felt his warm touch on my bare body. This was what I wanted my boyfriend to do, but his brother was the one doing it, and I couldn't stop. He began kissing his way down my neck, and soon the straps of my gown went off and he kissed my cleavage. I felt his fingers go down and I clenched him tight as I felt every bit of him. We were so lost in the moment that we didn't hear Jerry come into the room, and we were so consumed and didn't know the restroom door was opened, and he saw us deep into each other. He called my name softly in utter disbelief as his eyes widened, and I quickly pulled away from his brother. He shook his head and walked out. I quickly arranged my outfit, making sure I was decent before I hurried to the dining room where his parents and sister were still sitting. They still have the same demeaning look on their faces. I quickly told them goodbye and grabbed my bag. Then I ran out to pursue Jerry, but he had driven off in his car. I didn't come with a car, so I had to get a taxi. By the time I got home, he was gone. He had packed up some clothes and disappeared. It's been weeks and he still hasn't returned. I don't know what to do. I'm frustrated and I'm panicking. I need help. Please, any advice on how I can get to my boyfriend, because I've tried every means but still nothing. Update. I've read through all the comments and I won't lie, this has been a really difficult and emotional experience for me. To be completely honest, I'm a bit tipsy as I write this because everything has just been weighing so heavily on me. Seeing your responses has forced me to confront parts of myself and my actions that I've been avoiding, and I can't stop thinking about how I got here. When I first posted, I was looking for clarity, maybe even a little validation, but instead, I got a flood of comments that painted me in a light I wasn't ready to see. Comments that told me in no uncertain terms that I had made a terrible mistake. At first, I wanted to argue, to defend myself, because really, how could a bunch of strangers on the internet possibly get the full picture of my life and relationship from just a few paragraphs? But as I kept reading, it became harder to deny the truth. I messed up. I really messed up. Some of the comments were harsh, brutally so. I won't lie. There were a few that made me cry, not because they were wrong, but because they hit so close to home. Words that were thrown around, and it hurt to see myself being described that way. But as much as it stung, I couldn't ignore that there was some truth to it. I see now that my intentions, however well-meaning they might have seemed to me, came across completely differently to everyone else, including Jerry. The more I think about it, the more I realize that my actions weren't just about his family or that dinner. They were about me and my insecurities. I spent so much time trying to prove to myself that I was enough, and that I could be both the bold, independent woman I've always prided myself on being, and the kind of partner Jerry needed me to be. But in my desperation to prove my worth, I didn't stop to consider how my actions might make him feel. The most painful thing is till today I haven't heard from Jerry, and when I approached his family, they humiliated me and Jerry's brother, who claimed to be different from everyone was not so different. His words to me were all lies because he didn't like me. He wasn't offering any help. He led me into this misery and wanted us to use me as his plaything. He was the only one that I could speak to on that family, so I pleaded him and asked if he knew of Jerry's whereabouts. He said that Jerry has moved on and that I should move on too. And didn't I know that I wasn't his kind of girl, because his kind of girl wouldn't have flirted with his brother or cheated on him. And that's the truth. I gave him to his brother. I shouldn't have. When I did that, I gave Jerry away. I pushed him away from my life, so I had to accept my fate. But how could Jerry be so cruel to leave me without a word? And I checked his workplace, but I'm told he had quit. I am so in the dark, wrapped up in the consequences of my own actions. There's nothing more hurtful than this. The payback is just too much. Did I not really mean anything to him? Yes, I know that I messed up, but the silence is just killing. A part of me is holding on to hope that he'll come back, that we'll be able to talk and work through this. But another part of me knows that I might have already done irreparable damage. I disrespected not just his family, but the relationship we spent years building together. So here I am, sitting alone in the silence I created and trying to figure out what to do next. I wish I could go back to that night and make a different choice, but I know that's not possible. All I can do now is try to learn from this and figure out how to move forward, even if it means accepting that I've lost him for good, and it's all because of one stupid dress. To everyone who commented, thank you for your honesty, even when it hurts. Your words have forced me to take a hard look at myself, and while it's been painful, it's also been necessary. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I have a lot of growing to do. And I just hope that, wherever Jerry is, he knows how sorry I am for everything I put him through.